We still got a whole lot of offseason left, but it sounds like the Sacramento Kings are done making moves, at least significant ones, according to a conversation that Kings general manager Monte McNair had with Jason Ross of Sacktown Sports 1140. So if the Kings are done and Kevin Huerter is still on this roster, what is his role going to be with this team going forward? We'll discuss that, plus where Keon Ellis fits into things right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. We are in the thick of the slowest part of the sports calendar. Sports just aren't sportsing the way that we want them to right now. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up every customer with a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. Monte McNair told Jason Ross of Sacktown Sports 1140 in an interview, quote, "At this point, we are expecting that this is the core group we will go into training camp with." He proceeded to talk about he's always keeping an eye open for ways to improve the team. It's that flexibility we know Monty loves and values so much with how he runs his organization. But it sounds like even with Brandon Ingram still out there, Lowry Markkanen still out there, Kyle Kuzma still out there, Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson still out there, sounds like the Kings, for the most part, are done. Now, there might be minor moves and minor tweaks here or there with roster spots and the ability to invite, I think, up to 20 players to training camp. So we might get some minor things and minor signings, like, for example, like last year when the Kings added Nerlens Noel and then ended up getting rid of him when they brought in JaVale McGee, right? Like, little things could still happen. But in terms of significant moves that we've spent so much of this summer talking about, now that the DeMar DeRozan bombshell has gone off, sounds like things are going to quiet down for the Sacramento Kings here. And the question is, with the assets to still do more and the availability to still do more, is that the right decision for the Sacramento Kings? I personally feel like it is. I understand those of you out there who want the Kings to strike now, want them to build on the momentum of adding DeMar DeRozan, and if you feel DeMar DeRozan is not enough, I understand, because I read the comment section. Many of you saying the Kings still need size. Many of you saying the Kings need a better backup center. The Kings need more rim protection, blah, blah, blah. I see it, and to some extent, you're right. The Kings were never really going to build a perfect roster this offseason, but technically they have the assets to do more if they want to. But I've talked about this before, talked about it a lot after the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade went down, and I'll reiterate it here. Having the flexibility with assets going forward and choosing to not go all in this summer gives Sacramento the opportunity to find out what this core is still missing. We think we know based off of roster construction, right? We think we know based off of player archetypes, but when we see this team play on the floor together, where are their strengths, where have they improved, and where are their weaknesses, and what holes does this roster still have? We'll get the context of this group actually playing together now with Malik Monk returning and DeMar DeRozan as part of that group, and then come the trade deadline, or come next offseason, or whatever the case may be, when Sacramento's ready to make another improvement on top of that, or maybe another star becomes available then who's not available right now and is not in the conversation right now this offseason. The Kings still have their assets to make that move. Now, I'm not trying to preach more patience to you, because we've gone through off seasons and back-to-back trade deadlines where the Kings did nothing or next to nothing, right? The DeMar DeRozan summer was a pretty big deal for Sacramento, so they haven't been sitting on their hands this offseason by any means. But I understand any frustration that you have with, Matt, it's great that they'll have the assets going forward, but if they can make the improvements now for sure, why wouldn't they make them versus waiting on a hypothetical that something better could be available only for the Kings not to make it work then? We've seen before the Kings have tried to make moves and it takes two to tango, and other teams almost made them and then went in a different direction or whatever the case may be. That could happen to the Kings again, yes. But again, Monte McNair's word, his MO, his identity is flexibility. And the Kings maintain flexibility by holding on to these assets. So the major thing that I wanted to talk about now that we are not guaranteed, but almost we should expect this team, this core to be solidified, this team to be pretty much set in stone. Kevin Huerter is still on the roster. Kevin Huerter was one of the guys that the Kings were shopping heavily. It was Barnes and it was Huerter. Some of us thought that both would be gone. Many of us thought one out of the two of them were going to be gone. And I said before, and I'm on the record saying, if I thought any of the two were being traded, if it was only going to be one out of the two of them, I thought it was going to be Kevin. I thought Harrison fit more with what the Sacramento Kings were trying to do. Harrison has the size that this Kings team needs more of. Plus, I think Harrison had a better understanding of how to play in Mike Brown's system compared to Kevin Huerter, who seemed to be on the outs. That being said, the San Antonio Spurs essentially chose who they wanted, and they wanted Harrison Barnes for their reasons, and I'm not saying that's the wrong decision by any means. Kevin Huerter is still on this roster going forward. The Kings probably had opportunities to just trade Kevin Huerter away, but not only is he on a really, really, really good contract, he's a valuable asset with an incredible skill that's so important in the modern NBA, three-point shooting. So now that Kevin Huerter is staying, the Kings chose not to just dump him for nothing, which is the absolute right decision, considering they still have control over him going forward, and he's not eating up a bunch of cap space or anything like that. Kevin Huerter's a King going forward. What does that look like? What is Kevin Huerter's role with this team? Coming back from his shoulder injury. I think it's the exact same injury that Devin Carter is dealing with right now. Is he right back into the starting lineup where he's pretty much been, with the exception of a couple of games where he was replaced by Chris Duarte, who's no longer on this team? Or is he now fighting for a spot off the bench? I don't think it doesn't make sense for there to really be a world where Kevin Huerter doesn't play. Again, he's too good, he's too valuable not to play. But I have legitimate questions about Kevin Huerter being a starter. The argument for it is pretty obvious. Shooting and spacing next to Fox and DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis. The argument against it primarily falls on the defensive end. That, as we saw last season, not only did Huerter struggle to live up to the defensive expectations of the Sacramento Kings and Mike Brown, Kevin Huerter was straight targeted on the defensive end by opposing teams starting two guards and starting players, period. If whoever Kevin was guarding to start the game, that guy went into attack mode very quickly. Teams hunted matchups and mismatches against Kevin Huerter. So that's a big concern. But regardless of what role Kevin Huerter is playing, or rather where he is in the rotation, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, 10-minute stretch, 6-minute stretch, 2-minute stretch, no matter what and where Kevin is playing, his role is the exact same. Kevin Huerter is a poacher. That is what Kevin Huerter needs to be on this team. Kevin Huerter's job is to come into the game and be a volume three-point threat. And threat is the intent. I'm using that word very intentionally. Threat. Threaten the opposing team with your ability to knock down a shot or catch fire at any given time. They want to dare you to beat them from the perimeter. You better be ready not to just hit that, or to shoot that shot. You better be ready to hit that shot, right? Kevin Huerter shot at a 36% clip from three-point range last season. He was at 40% the season before when he played super well in Sacramento. He needs to be right in the middle. minimum at that 38% clip, especially for the volume of threes that I believe he is going to be shooting. Whether Kevin Huerter is playing 6 straight minutes, 5 straight minutes, whatever the case may be, no matter who he's on the floor with, Kevin Huerter's job is a green light from three-point range. Don't take crappy shots. Don't force anything. With the weapons that the Kings have top to bottom offensively on this roster and the expectation that one of Fox, Sabonis, or DeRozan is going to be on the floor at all times, Kevin Huerter is going to have the opportunity and the looks to hold defenses accountable and keep them honest on the perimeter. They want to leave you, make them pay for it. They want to stay on you, you're opening up space for your other primary offensive stars to go to work and do what they do best. His role is simple. It's straightforward. The only thing Kevin Huerter cannot do is not shoot. If he's not shooting or he's shooting poorly, he's done for the night, right? And that's, if you have a quick hook, if you're Mike Brown, it's unfortunate, but again, you're in the business of winning games. Honestly, I know he can assist from time to time. He is going to be asked to do more rebounding wise because everybody is on this Kings team. Kevin Huerter, if he's not giving you 3-point shots and volume scoring, he's not really giving you much of anything. Defensively, you know what he is. You accept what he is. He's going to get targeted. But if he can communicate on the defensive end, play with effort and physicality, he's probably still going to be beat because he just lacks like the lateral and horizontal quickness to stay in front of guys. He's going to get targeted. It's going to happen when Kevin Huerter's on the floor. But hopefully his offense and the work rate that he's putting in defensively and the team defensive identity that the Sacramento Kings are trying to consistently establish for themselves, hopefully that can all combine into him being more of a net positive than a net negative because of his offensive contributions and how him being on the floor opens up opportunities for his teammates. That is what Kevin Huerter's role is. That's it. Straight. It's simple. It's straightforward. And is it, let's put it this way. If I were Kevin Huerter and I were listening to this podcast, and I highly doubt he is, but if you are, hi, Kevin. You're great. I would probably hear what I'm saying and I would think, F you. I'm more than just a shooter. Maybe you are. Or maybe you feel like you should be. But with this team and how they're constructed and how many offensively skilled players are now on this roster who need the ball in their hands to be successful, Kevin, your job is to stay out of the way, poach that perimeter, move off the ball, come off the DHOs. When the ball touches your hand, you should be looking at the rim first. And if it is the right shot, let it fly. If it goes in and keeps going in at a high clip, you're going to have a consistent rotational spot with good playing time. If you're not hitting shots, Keon, get in the game. Devin Carter, get in the game. Or DeRozan, you're playing almost 40 minutes tonight. That's it. That's what I think Kevin Huerter's role is with the Sacramento Kings. Maybe I'm underselling him. Maybe it's too simple. Maybe it's still asking a lot. How are you feeling about that Kevin Huerter role and how you think Kevin Huerter should be used? And do you think he should start or come off the bench? Let me know at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Another guy who there are going to be questions asked about his role for the Kings going forward and whether or not he's ready for a big one is Keon Ellis. We'll talk about him in just a second. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Keon Ellis was one of the best stories for the Sacramento Kings last season, going from a two-way player to a full NBA contract, while not just playing starting minutes, but in many ways earning starting minutes. Coming into this offseason, there was a genuine, legitimate conversation about, is Keon Ellis the Kings' future choice as their starting two-guard? And that conversation's not dead, but I think the context around that conversation has changed. And allow me to explain that a little bit. First and foremost, as great as Keon was last season, Keon was a necessity. Now, he made the absolute most out of his opportunity, and this is not meant to take anything away from him. In fact, I think this is almost, it gives him more credit on top of what he's already received. The Kings lost De'Aaron Fox early in the season to an injury. Keon Ellis starts. The Kings beat the Oklahoma City Thunder without Fox. Yes, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are the number one seed in the Western Conference, beat them in Sacramento without De'Aaron Fox as part of the NBA in-season tournament. Keon Ellis, I think, was like 8-0 at one point as a starter. Then he steps in, of course, later on when both Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk go down with injuries, and Keon Ellis steps in and plays really, really well against the Golden State Warriors, and then really, really struggles as a starter in the play-in elimination game against the New Orleans Pelicans. I think those two games back-to-back are a good representation of where the Kings are at with Keon. Which version of Keon offensively is true to who he is? Because if Keon Ellis is going to be defensively, we know what Keon brings, right? The expectation for what Keon is going to do on the defensive end is known. We expect the effort that Keon plays with defensively to always be there. If it's not there, he has no chance of playing a major role with the Kings, right? That is his meal ticket in so many ways. But the Kings are not just looking for specialists. They're looking for guys who are dangerous on both ends of the floor. Dynamic defenders who can play the way that the Kings want to at their foundation, but on the offensive end of the floor are not just standing on the perimeter watching while De'Aaron Fox and the other stars try and score and go to work and do their thing. Keon's never been that. Keon Ellis has never been a net negative on the offensive end who just stands on the perimeter and watches. But there are nights where Keon offensively doesn't make enough of an impact to what the Kings need in that moment, or will need on that given night, or want from that starting position consistently. I think the fact that Keon Ellis has played as much of the California Classic and NBA Summer League as he has, and by the way, the Kings played tonight. I think they played the Memphis Grizzlies or something. No, they didn't play. I don't know who the hell they played tonight. I've, to be honest with you, not been paying a ton of attention to the Summer League. But Keon did not play tonight. He didn't. So I think that's good. I don't really understand why Keon has been playing as much as he has. The only thing that makes sense to me is that the Sacramento Kings were trying to see what they got. I don't know if the Kings are fully convinced that Keon is a starting caliber two guard on a team that has ambitions of a deep playoff run into a championship team. In fact, when I put it that way, ask yourself, pause this podcast and ask yourself, do you think the Sacramento Kings could win a championship or make a deep playoff run in the Western Conference with Keon Ellis as their starting two guard? If your answer is yes, good for you, and I love your confidence. But if you're hesitant, you're probably right where the Sacramento Kings are. The Kings probably feel that they needed to see more offensively out of Keon. Now, to be fair, he gave them a 29.53 6-assist performance against the New York Knicks the other night. He gave them a 30.4 rebound performance in that Kings near comeback win in the California Classic Championship game against the Warriors inside the Chase Center. They've gotten some big leadership, give me the ball, offensive performances from Keon. Now, that's never going to be his role with the main roster. He knows that, and the Kings know that. But they're giving him an opportunity to showcase his growth and what he can be as an offensive option. And some nights he's really shown he can do that. Other nights he's just been fine. Which to me, if Keon Ellis is just fine offensively with the impact that he makes defensively, he's going to be great for the Kings. He's going to be a rotational player. He has earned a rotation spot based off of how he played last year, but he has not earned security as a starting two guard when there are players at that position that we know are better than him on this roster, number one. And number two, this is a results league where the Kings are in the business of winning right now, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if they have to be brutal and take away the story to replace it with results, that is the route that they're going to go. So I think it's a legitimate question about Keon Ellis as a starter going forward. Does he have a chance? 100%. He's going to go into training camp, and that's technically his spot to lose. He's going to fight Huerter for it. He's going to fight Monk for it. When Devin Carter comes back to some extent, he might even fight Devin Carter for it to some extent. But as of right now, maybe the expectation should be that he's not going to have that spot. Again, I think he's absolutely going to have a rotational role. And maybe he plays so well in that rotational role coming off the bench as like the 7th, 8th, or 9th man that he vaults himself right back into the starting conversation. Although I firmly believe Malik Monk should be the starting two. And trust me, those conversations are going to pick up and continue. That's going to be a major focal point on this Locked On Kings podcast when we get close to training camp. That's going to be a big storyline that we'll discuss. But regardless, I feel at this point that Keon Ellis's days as the starting two for the Sacramento Kings might be numbered. Just a feel, just me reading the tea leaves and trying to make sense of why the Kings had him play so much during Summer League. That's my read on the situation. I don't know if you agree or disagree. Feel free to let me know. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. We all love sports, and we never want them to end. Unfortunately, though, when we're in this MLB All-Star break part of the sports calendar year, there is nothing going on, right? Sure, the NBA Summer League's going on. We try and enjoy that as much as possible. But in reality, this is the slowest, deadest time of the sports year. We got to get through it together. Thankfully, FanDuel is making that easier. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets and cook up any masterpiece that I want whenever I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So you don't have to stop playing through these summer months. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summertime. So I'm going to end this podcast a little differently. I'm going to kind of go away from the Sacramento Kings for a second, but I'm going to stay in Sacramento because today the MLB schedules for 2025 dropped. Yeah, the MLB's weird. Baseball drops their next season schedules while they're in the middle of their current season. At least they waited to the All-Star break to do it this time, so it's not distracting from other games. Regardless, the A's are going to be in Sacramento starting next season. There is going to be some overlap with when the Sacramento Kings are playing. Hopefully there's a lot of overlap, which means the Kings are playing into June, and they're making a deep playoff run. But regardless, the A's, I would say Sacramento A's, but the A's are intentionally not putting a city name in front of them, which is stupid, but whatever. The A's are going to be playing in Sacramento, and their first game will be March 31st against the Chicago Cubs. That is their opening day, opening week, really, is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They start technically on the road, but their home opener is against the Chicago Cubs. Some notable teams coming into town amongst the Philadelphia Phillies and the Baltimore Orioles. The New York Yankees will be in town. Yeah, John Fisher is very excited to watch Aaron Judge hit home runs against his team in Sutter Health Park, so he's getting his wish, I guess. The New York Yankees will be in town for Mother's Day weekend, May 9th through 11th. Then, I know a lot of you are going to be paying attention to this, the San Francisco Giants will come to town, to the home of the Sacramento River Cats, their AAA affiliate. The Giants will be at Sutter Health Park on 4th of July weekend, July 4th through 6th here. Now, of course, a big topic of conversation with the A's playing in Sacramento in these summer months is how freaking hot it gets. Check this out. The Kings play 41 home games from June through August. A lot of home games in the summer heat. Now, we don't know the start times of these games yet. To be fair, the majority of these games, the vast majority of these games are going to be played at night, where first pitch is at like 7 o'clock, which it'll be a little bit cooler, still be a little toasty, but not nearly what the heat is like at like 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon. They're not going to be able to avoid day games, though. There are going to be some day games in there where they're playing through the heat. There is a 9 home game stretch from July 4th through the 13th. If we were to compare this year's temperatures at that time to what they could be next year, this year from July 4th through the 13th, the temperature in Sacramento was 108, 109, 112, 97, 108, 111, 111, 98. That is an average of 106 degrees over that stretch, when the A's are going to be in the heart of their season playing baseball in the heat of the summer. If you weren't aware, even though I am an A's fan, and even though, of course, I love Sacramento and want the best for Sacramento, I am not a fan of this move at all. Part of me wants to be very, very excited about the A's playing in Sacramento. Part of me thinks it's incredibly cool. But I'm an Oakland A's fan through and through. I support Oakland. I support Oakland fans. And I sure as hell don't support the owner, not just the worst owner in the MLB, the worst owner in sports, John Fisher, who's bringing this team to Sacramento, and that Sacramento and Vivek Ranadive are getting into bed with, so to speak. Sure, there's a chance that the A's could stay here long term, as long as John Fisher is no longer the owner. It's a more enticing or appealing situation than the A's, of course, going to Las Vegas and John Fisher making a boatload of money off of that. But regardless, I'm not a big fan of it. If you want to know why, I've talked more about that and ranted more about that on past episodes, or you can look up my work with ABC 10 or whatever you want to check that out. But ending this podcast with the Sacramento A's stuff, because at least it's pretty cool to some degree. It's pretty cool. I'm not happy about a lot of it, but it's pretty cool to have the Chicago Cubs coming into Sacramento for their first ever home series at Sutter Health Park, and then the Giants and the Yankees and the Phillies and the Orioles and all these teams coming to town, Boston Red Sox. It's pretty awesome. That's going to be cool in a lot of ways. So get ready to spend your money both on Kings tickets and on A's tickets at the same time in March and April and hopefully May and June. Appreciate your support here of the Locked On Kings podcast. As always, on the next episode, I'm very excited about this episode. I had a conversation, off the record, with a NBA assistant coach, a current NBA assistant coach. I'm not going to say who it is. It's not an interview. I just had a conversation with him, a long conversation about DeMar DeRozan and what he brings to the Sacramento Kings. The things that this coach told me about what DeMar brings to Sac and how DeMar helps make the strengths of this Kings team 10 times stronger made me very excited, so I'm excited to share that information with you. That's coming on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.